The Last of Us Season 2 is going to be one of the most controversial second seasons ever made, because it's based on one of the most divisive sequels in gaming history. But there is a way they can avoid the same backlash that the sequel experienced. How? Simple. Don't copy the game. No, they don't need to change the plot, but by making these 3 slight alterations, The Last of Us Season 2 could shine in ways that the game failed to. Starting with the first change. Oh, and in case it wasn't obvious, huge spoilers for The Last of Us Part 2 and potentially Season 2 as well.
So, is everything you were hoping for?
It's got its ups and downs, but you can't deny the view, though.
In The Last of Us Part 2, we get to see fan favorites Ellie and Joel return. We're also introduced to several new characters, including a professional golfer named Abby. Unlike the other characters, Abby is set up for failure almost immediately. Not only does she get thrown into a sequel as a new playable character, but she also practices her long game on one of the most beloved characters from Part 1. That's already controversial enough, but there was an even bigger problem. The decision was made to allow us to play as Abby after she gets a Joel in 1. Therefore, is it any surprise that videos like this went viral, resonating so deeply with fans? This was done to show us Abby's life before and after Joel's demise. But how do you expect people to care about her story when she takes out their favorite character in such a brutal and unexpected fashion? But then you might be wondering, how do they avoid that issue from the game without outright changing the plot? Easy. You start the Abby sympathy arc first. Rather than having her do what she does within the first few moments on screen, let the audience learn more about her first. It's a lot easier to digest her actions once we know the reasoning and see what's led up to this point. You can't just shock fans with a sudden tragedy and then expect them to sympathize with her after. I mean, think about it in real life. First impressions are really important. They set the tone, and even after any extra context is added, it's often difficult to shake those initial feelings. To make her sympathy arc more effective, the show will also need to tone Abby down a bit. I mean, in the game, she seriously considers taking out Dina even after finding out she's pregnant. And I know this is part of her own character development and the mirroring between Abby and Ellie, but I'll reiterate, after what she's done, nobody cares about her struggles and the demons she's fighting with. It's no surprise that most of the backlash surrounding this game comes from Joel's ending. That's why the next modification to the story is arguably the most important one the show needs to make. Look, there's a lot of ground to cover in this second season, from the current day events to all the flashbacks that are going to take place. In The Last of Us Part 2, one of the biggest, most memorable events from the game is Joel's death. It was a punch in the gut for fans because it took place at the very beginning of the story. I mean, we already talked about how it drove so much anger and hatred towards Abby as a character, but this decision was more divisive than it needed to be. The death of a beloved character should feel tragic. It should evoke emotions of anger and sadness, but those feelings should be directed towards the character in the game, not the company making it. So why did this bother people so deeply? The timing. Fans waited 7 years to see how Joel and Ellie's story progressed. So when he was killed off in the first act of the game, fans were pissed. I mean, sure, we saw him in flashbacks, but it was just a reminder of how his character was treated. To avoid this issue, the show needs to delay Joel's tragic ending to later on in the season. It'll allow fans to experience more of the relationship between Joel and Ellie, instead of only seeing it in flashbacks. This would also be a great time to see all the tension that's created after the events of the first game, with Ellie finding out about the truth. The presence of Pedro Pascal in these first few episodes would really make you feel the weight of his absence. In the video game, Joel's death seemingly came out of nowhere, leading fans to think that it was done just for shock value. One of the most common complaints surrounding Joel's death was that he wouldn't have found himself in that situation, because he survived so many years by being untrusting of strangers.
Please!
Holy shit. Help! Are we gonna help him?
Put your seatbelt on, Ellie.
Well, what about the guy?
He ain't even hurt.
The best way to address this is to show him aging with time. Maybe as the episodes progress, we see that he's a bit slower now. Maybe he's not as perceptive. Maybe he becomes less cynical. more trusting. There's plenty of ways that they can go about this, but the game didn't allow for any of that. But delaying Joel's death has another big benefit. Like I mentioned earlier, it gives the audience time to get familiar with Abby. Look, I'm very worried that HBO will follow in the game's footsteps and take him out within the first episode. It'd be a great way to drum up hype and controversy online, but would make it even harder for the audience to invest in Abby as anything other than an irredeemable villain. With an episode count of only 7, there's only really 2 ways to go about this. Either Joel will die in the first episode, or we'll see his story end at the mid-season mark. But while we're on the topic of Joel's end, if they decide to go ahead with doing it at the end of the first episode, I think they should just remove the golf club as a weapon of choice for this. Especially when you learn that it was only included because Neil Druckmann got accidentally hit by one when he was 16. Yeah, I'm serious. Anyways, I'm rambling on right now, but let's move on to the easiest change the show can make. Like if they don't make this change, then it'll just show how incompetent the writers are. The only redeeming factor stemming from Joel's death was the idea of Ellie getting her revenge. We knew a fight between Ellie and Abby was inevitable, and it was just a matter of finally getting to it. But of course, The Last of Us Part 2 made yet another bold decision. Rather than having Ellie carry out her vengeance, she has a change of heart at the very last minute. After, losing her father figure, almost losing Dina, and her baby, and then eventually losing Dina, and her baby, and also her fingers. But this change was expected. I mean, it's not like she was carrying out these absurd levels of violence just moments before. Naturally, fans pointed out this stark contrast in Ellie's behavior. Many fans felt cheated out of a satisfying conclusion to the story. Like I said, Ellie's revenge was the only saving grace that would have made this all worth it. But how can this be addressed without changing the plot? Well, thanks to the TV format, this is one of the easiest changes that can be made. As Ellie is progressing towards the final battle with Abby, the writers could show her having a change of heart. Maybe it's through conversations she has, or maybe she becomes more hesitant to hurt people. The seeds of doubt need to be planted much earlier on, something that the show could easily accomplish. When you're playing a video game, it can be jarring to suddenly remove the option of violently taking out people. This would nullify several gameplay mechanics like using guns, certain craftable items, and many of the skills that were required throughout the game. It could be done, but it does come with plenty of issues. Issues that you don't run into in a TV series. Now, incorporating all these changes would address a lot of the pain points that fans had with the first game, but will it be enough to win them back? Only time will tell. One thing I am hopeful for is seeing if HBO will focus a whole episode on one of the side characters again, similar to episode 4 from the first season. But I want to hear what you have to say. Do you think the second season of The Last of Us will be as divisive and controversial as the video game? Let me know in the comments below. But before doing that, make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. With all that said, thanks for watching and stay winning.